Good morning, Bookless Classroom. I do think I've got my titles on play. I don't know how long they last at each one of those titles, though. It's kind of weird. But let me see if they run through the titles. I don't have a title up there because I started here to see if it was going to start running through. And we're going to hold that up. I don't know why it's not, though. There it goes. 8,000 milliseconds. What's that? Who even knows what that is? I don't. It was playing. Now it's not playing. Doesn't make any sense. Oh, it's on play. Yeah, it is. What is she talking about? Oh my gosh. There. What is 8,000 milliseconds? There. It's switching by itself. That's what I wanted to do. It's got to be a little faster. There we go. So here we are getting our technology perfected. Can't you even tell? Did you notice I have the chalkboard back? And the interesting thing is that I was able to pull that right out. That's exactly the chalkboard right there that we left off with. The only difference, all I did was put 175 on there. We are here on day 175 in the classroom. And I have liked our book. First of all, I have to say that I was so excited about getting this book from the public library, from Plymouth Public Library. And then after reading it yesterday, it was such a good book. I was so excited, elated the whole time that I literally went to the book sale, because a couple of years ago, I went to the Commerce book sale, library book sale, and oh my goodness gracious, that is like a great date, right? That's all I'm going to say, Bookless. So I'm going to say, I'll probably say more, but let's get reading, shall we? So we are reading Russell Friedman's book, The War to End All Wars, which was actually what the purpose, if you could call it a purpose, if you could call it a thesis statement, for World War I, this is going to stop the rest of the wars. We're going to stop all of the wars. That, folks, was suppression. Okay. Chapter 2. Armed to the teeth. Now, remember, early birds, that we had, you remember those wonderful on that, and we will get to that slideshow, PowerPoint, on World War I. But what the wonderful thing, which I love, is great organization, right? So they organized that teachers pay teachers elementary school PowerPoint for World War I, which I have the link, and it just flashed through there, my references, so catch that reference and you can get it. They laid out the 4 reasons for World War I. And I asked you, as I'm reading, to try and think of these things, and we pointed them out. We, as in me, for you, so that makes a we, pointed them out as I was reading. And I was surprised. I was able to point a couple of them out, that it was very apparent that we were seeing certain alliances, right? Number 1. Number 2 was imperialism with Austria-Hungary, right? Austro-Hungarian people, right? It is exciting, isn't it? It's like, where's this movie, for Pete's sake? It's probably out there, but it's probably engulfed in World War I. What we need is some literature, right? Where's the fiction story behind this? Because this is good stuff. That probably is the fiction. Oh, I wouldn't want to say that, right? Because too many deaths. You can't say that. Too many deaths. We are on chapter 2 of our book by Russell Friedman, The War to End All Wars. It was, and actually just now I am remembering that when I learned that. Like, oh my gosh, what a blunder. What a human blunder to follow the war to end all wars 20 years later with a second war to end all wars. Dear Jesus. And we know more about the Second World War. I couldn't remember the title of the book, and gosh, I just can't believe I could forget something so important. Like this was supposed to stop all wars. Oh. Okay. So we read about murder. First of all, we read about before, which ended with that poem, Lost in France. Good God. The last line, if you didn't catch it, so you can watch day 174 of the Bookless Classroom and get the first part of this, but the last line of the poem by Ernest Rhys, R-H-Y-S, in 1924 is, and he is dead. And they list all these wonderful things he did. Dear God. Oh, I didn't do a close-up of the Europe before. The assassin is hauled away by police, and then 19-year-old Gavrilo Princip, he died of tuberculosis in his prison cell 4 years after the assassination. And isn't it always interesting? I mean, I'm not saying that young people aren't rebels. I'm just saying, what a sad thing to have all young people who are railroaded, who may have been. I mean, this really is a good cause. But even if you have a good cause, and by the way, I am learning this. Even if you have a good cause, they're watching you. They're watching every move you make in your good cause to make sure that you don't step over the line for that cause, right? It is, I don't know. All of us get away with certain things, right? And therefore the law is in place. But, according to scripture, we should get to the book, but according to scripture, really, God did not want those laws. He did not want those kings, because when there are laws, there are lawbreakers. And when there are laws, there are people who skate around the law, and there are people who observe the law, and there are people who write the law, and there are all kinds of people who are more interested in the law than they are moral justice. And all the cops are nodding their heads, right? Yeah, you break the law, that's my job, get over it. I get it. But your obsessive observation of those people that are on the right side of things makes you lawbreakers, because you cannot take your oath and be that biased. So I don't know. The paramilitary guys are like, yeah, we protect the United States of America no matter what. But the United States of America is an ideal. It's not land. It's not just land, right? It's an ideal. And to be on the wrong side of that, because you're fighting for land, That's what you're fighting for. In your mind, the military, in the military's mind, the United States of America is land. In the citizen's mind, the United States of America, you sold them an ideal. You gave them a piece of land in some instances. In other instances, you stole their land. In most instances, you stole their land. Here is a picture of Europe before the war. So we can see here, the other thing I noticed about this that I'd like you to take a look at is to notice what we're dealing with here are empires. There's the Russian Empire, there's the German Empire, and then there are what we would call states, right? So today we would call them states. And we had a lesson on states in the Bookless Classroom to explain exactly what a state is, right? Because we have a misconception of states. We call them countries, but they are states because states have certain rights that are not given to the union, the united group, no matter what. In this case, we called them alliances, right? And that's where we were. Alliances, imperialism, empires. We see empires. And what is the goal of an empire very often? It is a focus on land and not on the ideals of that land, of that country, what they're selling, but more so what you're selling are hopes and dreams based on morals and justice, that you will receive what is just. So this is just a whole trail of broken promises, which precedes the trail of tears. And they are more than just what the Native Americans have cried, faux show. Chapter number 2, armed to the teeth. You know, I know that there are people, I think that there are people who are bothered because I might not be able to see the wrongdoings of people I care about. I think I try and do that. But it is difficult. You can see from even a military perspective for people to admit that there are great wrongdoings by the people that you support, right? That being said, it's not rocket science. We've seen it. You have seen out there how I have been maligned. It is a mystery, right? That people who are mystery freaks would really latch onto, and yet it still says 0 people watching. I mean, what is this? Where are the boundaries for saying something and then meaning it? This was the war to end all wars. Where are the boundaries of saying something and then meaning it? I mean, it is totally off the rails that you would break your promise. And the promise was no more war. A mere 20 years later, with the annihilation of all kinds of minorities. Jews being the example. Again, you know what? I bet Jews don't like being the example. I bet they like being smart, have a business sense. They don't want to be the example. I don't know. I wouldn't want to be the example. Clearly I am. Okay, so chapter 2, armed to the teeth. Let's get to the picture first, shall we? And again, yesterday in class 174 of the Bookless Classroom, we did note that these pictures in here are cited. So we could find the pictures and find out whether or not our whole entire Library of Congress is made up of false photography from the Hollywood. From the Hollywood. Like the Facebook and like the Google. Okay, so what this says is the crowned heads of Europe, some of whom would soon be at war, assembled in 1910 for the funeral of British King Edward VII. Edward's son and successor, George V, is seated at the center. Standing behind him is his cousin Kaiser Wilhelm. Nice stash you got going on there. Kaiser. Of Germany. Albert, King of Belgians, stands next to the Kaiser on his right. That'd be this guy right here. Looking pretty young. Okay. That would be his right. Anyone? Oh, okay, I see what he's doing. He's got a crossed leg there. I was just looking at his at some of the poses we had going on there. You can, because I, did a close-up. Armed to the teeth. European powers had been fighting one another for centuries, but as the summer of 1914 began, Europe was at peace. Alfred Nobel, the Swedish inventor of dynamite and founder of the Nobel Peace Prize, wouldn't you know, the founder had something to do with militarism. Number 3 and number 4 was nationalism, which we are seeing here in the United States to a great degree. Rather than annihilate one another, the nations of Europe would have to settle future disputes through negotiation and compromise. Close economic ties among European countries also made a major war seem unlikely. Prosperity depended on international trade and cooperation. In addition, there were blood ties linking Europe's royal houses. So these are the alliances. Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany and King George V of Great Britain, grandsons of Britain's Queen Victoria, were cousins. Oh, yeah, now we know. Oh, this is so making sense now, isn't it? This is what I'm talking about. When you just read about it, you're like, this guy was murdered. Oh, by whom? Yes, because you are building, not that you can murder people. Tsar Nicholas II of Russia was a cousin by marriage. His wife Alexandra was one of Victoria's granddaughters. So these alliances aren't political alliances, you fools. And by the way, when I say that, why is it reported all over the place looking like these are simply political alliances? These are family alliances, folks. The whole idea of what a monarchy is all about. Remember, we started with our kinds of government, which I don't really want to pull up here. I've already been distracted, but I'll get to it, right? That was my kinds of government. But monarchy, a monarchy rule like this is, shut up, you peasants. I'll tell you what's going on, right? which is a dictatorship as well. So different levels. A monarchy does not have to not have their people vote, as we know from, the England's monarchy, right? Britain's monarchy that still exists. Another granddaughter, Anna, was Queen of Spain. Oh my gosh. This is what I'm saying. Where's this story? Where's the story of, and make it good. I mean, it is good. This elementary school book is showing us how good it is. No, that's the classroom. That's the teacher pulling it all together for you. That's why you need a teacher, not those stupid, ugly websites. Oh, pop it up here. Give me my 150 grand for that stupid website. Oh, just the one on Indian Removal Act. Except for France and Switzerland, every nation in Europe was a monarchy, and almost every European head of state was related to every other. And that's the reason why they're so worried about this screwed up gene pool that makes everybody have every disease on the planet, and their skin's so white you wouldn't be able to tell them off of this page. What is up with that? I saw a ghost literally walk into Aldi's the other day. Winter's not that long to be that ghostly white. I think you're not breathing in sunshine with that mask on your face. That's the problem. Okay. Most European, it's like they can't figure it out. They're all like, And don't even give me that. Yeah, whatever. Maybe. I don't know. Who knows? That would be very sad. I could fully see that happening when somebody is murdered. I could fully see that happening where it would be, you would have a moment like, what's going on? And that would probably be the last thought. That would be, or the last look on your face would have to do with something like what's going on. That really was a little too descriptive there. I have to say, for an elementary, I can't get that picture out of my head. So that was just a little bit too descriptive for me. Yeah, I'm having a hard time getting that picture out of my head. What we read on yesterday, day 174 of the classroom. Most Europeans looked forward to a peaceful future. The world is moving away from military ideals, declared influential British journal Review of Reviews. And a period of peace, industry, and worldwide friendship is dawning. It was easy enough to ignore the rivalries and suspicions among Europe's great powers that spelled trouble ahead. You got that right. Well said, elementary school book, Russell Friedman. Well said. Again, a little bit too much detail about the death of that. I understand that we have to make war seem like whatever it is, but oh my gosh, that was a little bit too much. It's one of the reasons why it's hard to dismiss it, right? You can't just dismiss a tragedy when you see or hear about it to a greater degree. It is just too much to dismiss. So in some ways, you kind of have to question. I'm always questioning the authenticity, right? Bookless, right? I'm always, that's kind of why you can sit back without the book and question the authenticity. How authentic did you find that murder to be? It was authentic, but oh my gosh, ugh. Right? So the book starts with the murder. And now we've got the headlines drawing near, but here it is a great point to make, which is that how could the common people have known this was boiling? And then when it's a family affair, and there likely were, right? Then it's a mess. It is why people go and, crank them on wheels in order to torture them as opposed to just simply executing them, right? We cannot get people's emotions involved in how, never mind, I can't even say that, right? We can't get people's emotions involved in war. Oh, what did she just say? That's what, who were those colonels? Schwarzkopf. Oh, everybody loved that dude too. He just seemed like a humanity in the midst of war. But that was just another war, wasn't it? After the war to end all wars, oh no, said the United States of America, we've got all this military stuff going on back here. I don't think so. So hold on one second because I got to take my gum out of my mouth. Oh, and we have to answer the question too, where I just put my gum. How do wars differ before World War I? Were they more of gentlemen's wars? And I do think I scratched my leather sofa with my fingernail. I am devastated. I take care of my things. I'm devastated. So, were they gentlemen's wars? Were they very different? Although if you were dealing with the same kind of lewd affairs, that wasn't the word I was looking for, but something like that, right? And heartbreak, then no, you're not talking about a gentleman's war. I don't know. Did they, prior to World War I and prior to a lot of that artillery, was it really a gentleman's war with, fencing? Then it became a gentleman's war, what? With duels. That's not really a gentleman's war, is it? You know what I mean? Okay. Let's get down to more business. There, I think I pulled this closer. I think I've got to move this, which way? There we go. Okay, and so how could they necessarily have gotten the correct information anyway, right? Who really knows that kind of thing that's going on behind closed doors within families? You all know what's going behind closed doors in my family, that's for sure. There's probably other things going on that you know that I don't even know, right? So it can happen. Germany was an ambitious young nation, you think? The German states had become a united country only in 1871 as a result of victorious wars against Austria and France. By 1914, the German Empire, with its dynamic economy and industrial might, had emerged as the most powerful nation on the continent of Europe. Germany was competing with its neighbors for trade, influence, and colonies overseas. In this, I'm going to pull it up. In this map that or in this PowerPoint, show you and take a look at, they do have here. So here are the allies, okay? So let's take a closer look at that. So yellow, allied powers, green, neutral powers, and red, central powers. Allied powers, we can see Italy, France, and Russia. The Central Powers, don't forget, one of the things I've been doing is memorizing where countries are, so I kind of know. So the Central Powers here are the German Empire, the Austrian Empire, and the Turkish Empire. And the neutral powers there are Spain and Sweden and Finland areas, and Denmark there, and Switzerland north of Italy. Okay, so that gives us a little bit of a different look of those empires. But what I wanted to show you here was this. So that was the beginning of what they were talking about, imperialism. So Germany wanted a piece of the action. So let's see here from this map, from this Teachers Pay Teachers map. Let's see here who had a lot of the power. Well, we see a lot of green, that's France. I see not many different states, but a lot of red there in the Northeast and in the South. That's Great Britain. I see some of that nice colored blue. That's Germany. I see some of that purple. That's Italy. I see a large piece of pink. That's Belgium. And blue, that's Portugal. And if you didn't notice, Portugal was part of the Allied powers, Italy, France, and Russia. So now what we see here is we see a reason for these alliances, right? Right there. Everybody wants more. Oh, and in case you didn't know, that's Africa. That's Africa, folks. Bookless Classroom, that's Africa. So what they're fighting for is power over, well, right there, it would have to be blacks. It's so interesting, isn't it? Egypt is part of France. So the green area, no, that wouldn't be right. That's off the coast of Spain and Italy. Egypt would be under Great Britain's rule. No, it's independent. It's the yellow that's the gold there, that's independent. That should be Egypt. Because Saudi Arabia is that beige colored area there. Okay? So I am looking at it close up as well, and I don't think I can pull it up. Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can. All right, I want to open it up right now for you and see what we've got there. I've got it right there. Okay, so those were our study skills that we were looking at, but there is what Europe looks like today. Can you believe it? Look at how fast I just like lickety split. And by the way, everyone called in sick. I know. April Fool's Day. They were like, ha ha ha. She doesn't celebrate April Fools. We're going to call in sick April 2nd. So there we are, Europe today. All right. So you could see where Spain is. You can see where Portugal is. Let me see where let's see here. So right here, right there, Spain and Portugal, right there. The brown area and the pink area is Spain and Portugal. But what I wanted to see was, so here is Africa today. So the area that we are talking about imperialism is Ethiopia. Ethiopia is the independent area. That is crazy. Let me turn off the labels so that you could see where Ethiopia. There's Ethiopia. I thought that was Egypt. This is Egypt. I'm interested in Egypt because that is so interesting. Ethiopia is independent. If you look at our preview map there, that's the gold area right there. That's in Africa. So that gold area is independent according to the legend there, right? Oops. According to the legend right here, I don't have it showing at this moment in time. Let me see if I could scroll that up a little bit without screwing it. There we go. Okay, so you could actually, the gold is the last one right there. So that's independent, right? So who is it on this map that's independent? That's that area right there. If I put the labels on, it says Ethiopia. I'm interested in Egypt because Egypt has always been revered as being wealthy, the Queen of Egypt. So there is a monarchy. Often there's a monarchy there. There were pharaohs ruling Egypt. This is Egypt here. If we turn on the labels, there's Egypt. I can't highlight it though when the labels are on. So there is Egypt. So where is Egypt then? Here, that would be owned by Great Britain, if you see, right? So it is the area that then touches the Middle East. So that's not way here in the green, but over there, up north in the pink. So that's the area, and that's the Suez Canal that then gets into the Middle East, which I think I had right here. Yeah, I did. There we go. So, oops, I'm not showing you. So there's the Middle East. So here is Saudi Arabia. I can't highlight Africa because the only highlighted ones are all in the Middle East right now, right? So but you can see right here in this area, that is the connection to Africa. This is the area connected to Africa, that area, and then here is Saudi Arabia. That is the area that's connected to Africa at the top there, not in the green, but in the pink. So this side of Africa at the top in the pink. That's what we're talking about. That area there, if we look at it from the perspective of the Middle East. All right? Got it? I think so. But the important point here is that we've got imperialism, and this is what families are fighting for. So this, in part, you can see, Bookless, can be problematic, a problem with all these families having such superiority, right? Wow. It is, what's so interesting is that what I'm saying, people have said, I'm learning it from other books and other things and things like that, but it is just really hard to fathom that this is where all of our wars began, right? The war to end all war, to begin all the next, how many generations of more wars. Because of this, in part. And also what I know is, in part, because of in part this German dominance, and what I also know is what we did in America is we brought over criminals. I mean, I would wonder if we don't have certain criminals living here in the United States that were brought in to do bidding. So if we, for example, captured Saddam Hussein, for example, right, and brought him over here to do our bidding, to do our dirty work, right? I would imagine eventually all those Arab nationalists might get together here in this country. I don't know. And do some, I don't know, 911 damage. Great Britain and France, the leading colonial powers, ruled much of the world beyond Europe's shores. So we saw that. They each possessed a far-flung network of overseas colonies, a source of immense wealth and national pride. Germany, a latecomer to the race for overseas possessions, had only a few colonies in Africa and the Pacific. Striving to be recognized as a world power as well as a European power, Germany sought to extend its influence in the few remaining areas of the world that were not under European rule. The Germans already had a big army equipped with the latest weapons. To compete for colonies, Germany's leaders decided that they also needed a modern ocean-going navy that could challenge Britain's centuries-old command of the seas. German shipyards rushed to build a fleet powerful enough to engage Britain's Royal Navy in battle. And there's the picture there. That is an extraordinary picture. Could you imagine seeing that even here on camera? I have to read it first. German battleships stream into the North Sea. Germany's race to build a powerful navy was seen as a threat to Britain's command of the seas. Look at that. If I were to think of that going on right now close to me, it would make me sick. I mean, all that smoke like that, just rolling over the waters, because look at how heavy those ships are. Where do they go for burial? Where does all that metal go for burial? Do they go back to Pennsylvania where all that steel was made? Do they go back to the businesses who profited? I don't know. Let's see. Britain relied on its navy to safeguard the trade routes that brought riches to the small, densely populated British Isles and helped feed the British people. Germany's ambitions were seen as a threat to Britain's naval dominance. British leaders responded by launching an ambitious shipbuilding program of their own. So along with a rivalry to grab overseas colonies, imperialism, Britain and Germany engaged in a costly competition to build bigger and better battleships. That was the basis for the Star Wars. But sometimes I wonder, survival of what? It's survival clearly of this monarchy or whoever is in charge, right? So without a moral compass, they serve without a moral compass is what they're asking people to do in the military. If Britain felt challenged by Germany's aggressive push to become a world power, Germany felt threatened by France and Russia, its neighbor to the west and east. The French had suffered a humiliating defeat in their war with Germany in 1870 to 1871, when France was forced to surrender the provinces of Alsace and Lorraine, a loss that France could neither forgive nor forget. Fear and resentment of Germany had drawn France into a military alliance with Russia, as we saw, right? Which also looked upon the newly powerful German Empire on its border as a threat. Okay? So let's look at that again. So here's the alliance, the Triple Entente, Britain, France, and Russia, and the Triple Alliance, Germany, Italy, and Austria-Hungary. And then also then the allies throughout, then we also end up having these different allies you can see there. But let's get over here, right here to the map. That helps us out a lot better. So now what they're saying is that they feel that there is a threat because Russia is, I had to look at it in the map because, because Russia in the yellow there is on the border of Germany, Austria-Hungary Empire, right? So let's take a quick look here again. And this will give us a different picture of that same map there, right? So a different look. So there's Russia there, right? And there is the Germany, Austria-Hungary empires right here in the red on that map, on this map, right? So that really gives us a pretty good picture. And what did we say in some of our battles as well, like the Cuban Missile Crisis? Russia is too close to our borders since they have missiles. Since they have missiles in Cuba. That is no different than what brought on World War I. And that was the fear with that Cuban Missile Crisis as well. Okay. Germany's chief ally was Austria-Hungary, an unwieldy empire of several major religions and numerous languages and nationalities, including large numbers of Serbs who wanted to break away from the Austro-Hungarian Empire and declare their independence. The Serbs, like the Russians, were among the Slavic-speaking peoples of Eastern Europe. They looked to Russia for protection and support. Austria-Hungary, determined to hold its rickety empire together, suspected Russia of deliberately encouraging unrest. Kind of sounds like today, too, doesn't it? With the Ukraine. Rivalries among Europe's great powers had led to an elaborate network of military alliances in which one nation pledged to support another in the event of war. Germany and Austria-Hungary had joined with Italy in what was called the Triple Alliance, which we just saw right there, right on that I showed you. France and Russia had an alliance of their own, and Britain, while avoiding formal alliances, had signed ententes, which are understandings. I didn't know that. I heard that word, understandings. This is why I like these elementary school books like this. They had signed understandings with both France and Russia, forming what was known as the Triple Entente. So we saw that. Let's take a view at that again. So we've got these alliances forming as they're describing them. Okay? Here we've got the Triple Alliance, Germany, Italy, and Austria-Hungary. Eventually, right now, Italy is not involved. We haven't heard Italy, but this is eventually, we can see. And there's our Triple Entente, Britain, France, and Russia. Okay. Thanks, Teachers Pay Teachers, for giving me great kids' visuals. Rivalries among Europe's, I think I've already said this, military, in which one nation pledged, I don't know. Rivalries among Europe's great powers had led to an elaborate network of military alliances in which one nation pledged to support another in the event of war. Germany and Austria-Hungary had joined with Italy in what is called the Triple Alliance. I think, this is just what I just read. Duh. As the European nations chose up sides, they were busily arming themselves. Military leaders warned that it was essential to be strong and prepared as a warning to any aggressor. So along with the naval armaments race between Britain and Germany, European nations were competing in an arms race on land. Seeking security and military superiority, they recruited ever larger armies and navies, piled up more and more of the latest new weapons, and built wider and stronger fortifications along their national borders. Nice use of words. Nice expanding our vocabulary. Fortifications. This arms buildup alarmed some observers. Tsar Nicholas II warned that the accelerating arms race was transforming the armed peace into a crushing burden that weighs on all nations, and if prolonged, will lead to the very cataclysm it seeks to avert. I'm going to reread that, okay? Transforming the arm, that what he feared was that the accelerating arms race was transforming the armed peace into a crushing burden that weighs on all nations, and if prolonged, will lead to the very cataclysm it seeks to avert. The war to end all wars is going to be a cataclysm that they are seeking to avert. Great quote. On June 28, 1914, the day that Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated, the major European powers all had large standing armies, and they were all armed to the teeth. Here's a picture of Kaiser Wilhelm directing the German Army's 1906 maneuvers. He took great pride in his role as all-highest warlord. Nice use of the Lord's name. You worry about me using the Lord's name in vain. How about that, Kaiser? The assassination triggered a diplomatic crisis. Austria blamed the government of Serbia for the royal murders and for constantly stirring up trouble. Austrian Foreign Minister Berchtold called for a final and fundamental reckoning with Serbia. Austria issued an ultimatum, a list of demands that, if accepted, would compromise Serbia's independence. So Serbia at this time must have been an independent state like Ethiopia. No, working towards independence from Austria-Hungary. That's what's going on here. The Austrians knew that an attack on Serbia might draw in Russia, Serbia's champion. So before delivering the ultimatum, Austria obtained a pledge of support from its allies, Germany, in the event of a war. I don't think why would they have walked into a trap when they knew it was a trap? The Austrian ultimatum was delivered to the Serb capital, Belgrade, on July 23rd, 1914. When the Serbs refused to meet the Austrian demands, Austria declared war, confident of German support if the war spread. On July 28th, Austrian guns fired across the Danube River, at that time the boundary between the two countries, lobbing shells into nearby Belgrade and hitting a hospital. Windows were shattered to smithereens, reported a Serbian doctor, and broken glass. Oh, here, I didn't read this. Russian troops parade in honor of French President Raymond Poincaré during his state visit to Russia, July 1914. So that is a display of military power. This is something that Donald Trump talked about in his first term. He talked about displaying our military power in much the same way. What kind of feelings does that give you about the United States of America, if that were the United States of America? What kind of feelings does that give you about Russia? On July 28th, Austrian guns fired across... I already read that. Okay. Windows were shattered to smithereens, reported Serbian doctors, and broken glass covered many floors. Patients started screaming. Some got out of their beds, pale and bewildered. Then there was another explosion and another one, and then silence again. So it was true. The war had started. That also sounds like the Persian Gulf War. The very first thing that ended up getting hit was a hospital, I think. There was a hospital hit early on in the Persian Gulf War. It just seems like, why does history have to keep repeating itself? That's too weird. Austria now began to mobilize its armed forces, calling up hundreds of thousands of reserve troops and moving men into combat positions. Mobilization in any country was a lengthy process that could take weeks. Once the Austrians had assembled their troops, they planned to march into Serbia and settle the score by means of a swift offensive. Meanwhile, diplomats hurried back and forth between European capitals, exchanging notes, hoping to contain any fighting and avoid a wider conflict. The Russians were not eager to intervene, but they could not simply abandon their fellow Slavs of Serbia. Russian generals persuaded Tsar Nicholas to order a partial mobilization in response to Austria's full-scale preparation for war. If Russia reacted quickly and forcefully, perhaps Austria would take note and hold back. The German ambassador to Russia warned that Russian mobilization would compel Germany to gather its troops in turn, and that then a European war could scarcely be prevented. Alarmed at the prospect of war, Tsar Nicholas appealed directly to his cousin, Kaiser Wilhelm, to try and avoid such a calamity as a European war. The Tsar telegraphed, "I beg you, in the name of our old relationship, to do what you can to stop your allies from going too far." The telegram was signed Nicky. Before he received the Tsar's telegram, the Kaiser had sent the Tsar a telegram of his own, signed "Your very sincere and devoted friend and cousin, Willie." "I am exerting my utmost influence," he wrote, "to induce the Austrians to deal straightly, to arrive at a satisfactory understanding with you." But Austria was determined to punish Serbia, and by now Germany had responded to Russia's move by ordering a partial mobilization of its own. When word of the German action reached the Russian capital, Tsar Nicholas, after much hesitation, ordered the full mobilization of Russia's armed forces. "Think of the responsibility which you are asking me to take," the Tsar told his foreign minister. "Think of the thousands and thousands of men who will be sent to their death." Austria's threats of war had set off an escalating chain reaction. As one country's mobilization led to another, the rush of events overwhelmed the ability of diplomats to resolve the crisis. From then on, military calculations rather than diplomacy guided decisions in every European capital. Europe's leaders began to act as though war were inevitable. So see what happens when war gets in the hands of military people? They have one aim, and that is to defend and to offend, right? To go on the offensive and the defensive for protection of their country. Russia is here worried about the thousands and thousands of deaths. That's not a military concern, is it? And it's also not an empire's concern when they are basically sending peasants to war, right? They are the ones going to war. Mobilizing a nation's armed forces has been compared to drawing a gun. Theoretically, the nation that has its forces ready first gains a huge military advantage. An army that fails to take the offensive in time might be destroyed before it can complete its preparations. So, if it's going to be inevitable, we can't necessarily wait for the attack. We've got to take the offensive. With Russia preparing for war on its eastern border, Germany decided that it must order a full mobilization too, unless Russia halted its plans. The Germans now dispatch ultimatums to both Russia and its ally France, warning that German mobilization will follow unless Russia suspends war measures against ourselves and Austria-Hungary. The ultimatum to France declared mobilization inevitably means war, and demanded a guarantee of French neutrality. On August 1st, Britain's King George V telegraphed his cousin Tsar Nicholas, "I cannot help thinking that some misunderstanding has produced this deadlock. I am most anxious not to miss any possibility of avoiding the terrible calamity which at present threatens the whole world." Here is a picture of Tsar Nicholas II and his future wife, Alexandra, the granddaughter of Queen Victoria. This is their official engagement photo. It's a nice looking couple. But the king's message arrived too late. Early that evening, the German ambassador to Russia, Count Frederick von Portales, requested a meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Sazonov. The two diplomats were old friends. Portales, that's what it basically says, Portales, seriously. Portales, visibly upset, asked Sazonov if Russia was prepared to answer the German ultimatum. Sazonov, as he recalled the meeting years later, replied that it was not possible to stop the Russian mobilization that was now underway. Even so, Russia wanted to continue negotiations and hoped to avoid a war. In that case, sir, I am instructed by my government to hand you this note. Portales said. He pulled a paper from the pocket and handed Sazonov a declaration stating that because of Russians' continued mobilization, a state of war now existed between Russia and Germany. At this point, the German ambassador burst into tears and Sazonov began to weep too. The men embraced, then pulled apart. This is a criminal act of yours, Sazonov told the German ambassador. The curses of the nations will be upon you. We are defending our honor, the ambassador replied. Your honor was not involved, Sazonov said. Oh, that's spelled differently. You could have prevented the war by one word. You didn't want to. Then Sazonov escorted the tearful German ambassador to the door. The two friends never saw each other again. France, like Russia, rejected the German ultimatum and declared a general mobilization. On August 3rd, convinced that French forces were about to attack its western border, Germany declared war on France. Now, Germany is really a little bit of an instigator, it sounds like, right? All this mobilization, all this preparedness, wanting domination, they wanted war. I don't know, you Germans, you just seem like you are warmongers. You seem like you are white supremacists. You support eugenicists. Or eugenics, however you want to say it. However you want to conjugate it. Germany had a secret military plan that would go into effect if the Germans faced a two-front war against France and Russia. German troops would immediately sweep through France, occupy Paris, and knock France out of action in the West before Russia had enough time to fully mobilize. Germany could then shift its forces to the east, avoiding a lengthy war on two fronts. The intricate German war plan called for the deployment of 1 million troops transported by 11,000 trains according to a precise timetable. Gosh, they don't sound like they're prepared for war at all. It doesn't sound like they would instigate a war that made them that prepared for war at all, does it? Once set in motion, the plan could not be stopped without putting Germany at a crippling disadvantage. Well, maybe that was called for. Here, this picture cheered and saluted by the patriotic crowd. The German cavalry regiment parades through Berlin as it leaves for the war front, August 1914. Their traditional spiked headgear will soon be replaced by more practical steel helmets. Oh, more steel. Who's the steel capital of the world? I don't know, but it sounds like a football name. Let's finish it. Let's finish the chapters. We're almost done. The Germans had demanded free passage through neutral Belgium in order to attack France. When the Belgians refused, Germany declared war on Belgium. On August 4th, 1914, German troops marched across the Belgian border. Britain had been watching events from across the English Channel, its critical sea route to the outside world, and now felt threatened. Britain declared war on Germany, joining France and Russia. During the next few days, Austria-Hungary declared war on Russia, while France and Britain declared war on Austria-Hungary. And so Europe was caught up in a war that few had expected and almost no one wanted. Even today, except for one group, even today, historians continue to debate the tangled and confusing causes of the conflict, the series of accidents, blunders, and misunderstandings that swept the nation of Europe toward the war in the summer of 1914, whether war might have been avoided, and which persons or nations were most responsible. Wars in the past had often been caused by countries seeking more land or natural resources, or acting out of suspicion and fear of their rivals. And once a country is fully armed and poised to attack, war, it seems, is hard to avoid. The events that unfold as Europe careened toward catastrophe appear to defy logic and common sense. Why? It sounds like exactly the same thing going on. Wanting more land, that's what Germany said. He knew what he was doing. That's exactly what they just said over here. Your honor was not involved. You could have prevented the war by one word. You didn't want to. Austria had wanted to punish Serbia, and then one by one, other nations were drawn into the quarrel because of these alliances. To support Austria in its conflict with Russia over Serbia, Germany had attacked France by invading Belgium, and Britain had declared a state of war throughout the vast British Empire. In the rush of events, the Kingdom of Serbia, supposedly the cause of the war, had almost been forgotten. Each nation believed that it was fighting a defensive war forced upon it by someone else, and each army was convinced that it could defeat its enemies within a few months and that the troops would be home by Christmas. This is Dr. Annette Feravich, where we are reading The War to End All Wars. We will start tomorrow with Chapter 3, To Berlin to Paris. Did I get that last picture in there? I did not. A woman marches alongside French troops as they leave for the front, August 1914. Okay, Dr. Annette Feravich, this is the classroom. We will continue with our great book, The War to End All Wars by Russell Friedman, a story of World War I. Thanks for joining me here. We went over, but we got our chapter in, along with all of my commentary. I'm so happy about that. Join me tomorrow. Thanks.